Hey, welcome to HR Famous, brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies. Named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider, Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com. HR Famous is also brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today.
HR Famous. It's Jessica Lee in the driver's seat. And with me this week, my friends Chris Dunn and Tim Sackett. You guys, it's another day in paradise. HR Famous is here to drop the, hot takes on what is happening in the world of work. Chris Dunn, Tim Sackett, how you guys doing?
Hot takes. I've got them ready, Jlee. I'm glad you're hosting. This feels good that Timmy and I just get just react. And
just sit back on the couch.
Yeah, the professional is doing what she does, and we're just going to come in hot.
I
felt instantly at ease too on your open.
Oh,
really?
Oh
gosh, look at that voice coming in. Yep, ready.
I thought you were going to say instantly with anxiety. You know what this is like is on rare occasion, I will say to my husband, I'll drive this time, which is not very frequent. Usually I like to sit in the passenger side, scroll through social media, but once in a while I like to drive. So guys, you know what? Big week for me. And I wanted to talk about it because, we've been home for 100 plus days since March. And for the first time since March, I went back to the office and it was bizarro. Like, Tim, you're at the office every day, but for Chris and I, this was crazy. So I got to tell you guys, first, let me tell you, it was bizarro. And then I want a reaction because I went into the office and I had to get a traveler letter because I had to get approval to go into the office because we're not letting everyone in there. So I had to get my traveler letter, I had to get my mask ready. I went into the office. There's signage everywhere around social distancing. And it was the most bizarre experience, going in there. I have to tell you, for everyone who's going back, get ready. You got to prepare yourself. This is different. Chris, you went into the office recently too, huh?
Yeah, I did. Probably our experiences were a little bit different. So I went in and we've had very few people in the office. Nobody as a normal course of business. I don't know what your situation is at your office, Jlee. I'll be interested to find out. But I went in on a day, showed up at 1:00. Nobody's in there. The lights are off. And it's something out of a zombie movie.
You don't know what's going to come out of the corner.
Yeah, it's dark, and it's a little as someone who spent a lot of time in that office and has a lot of my identity tied up with the company, it was weird. And also being involved with a business that is not going to have its best year, in 2020, after many years of having the best year. It was probably the first time, Jlee, and I'll throw it to you to react. It was probably the first time in over a month where I had been depressed about anything at work. I'd kind of settled into this new normal, figuring out, hey, this is what we're going through, right? And we're just going through this. But you do that from a remote perspective, and then you go into what your identity is tied to physically. And if nobody's there and the lights are off, and there's stuff kind of thrown about on the desk as was left on March 13th or whatever day it was.
Totally.
The Walking Dead.
It's just weird as hell. And I'll give you this last thing. You'll love this, Jlee, and then you can tell us about your experience. So I needed to pick up some stuff. So I go in, I had a couple of calls. So I took the calls there. The lights are off. I didn't even turn on the lights. And
just sat in the dark.
And I go, and by the way, for everybody, this is a location that can house about 70, 80 employees. And I go in the kitchen, Jlee, and we had made the decision to put in one of those flavored water, like solutions.
Yeah.
And I turned the corner and I saw it lit up like it was underneath a Christmas tree. And I said, you poor flavored water machine, like you came to play on Christmas Day and nobody was here. Like literally, I might have taken like portions of the second gallon that was delivered from that machine. Just relics of another time.
I'm surprised you just didn't unplug it and take it back to your house.
Well, we don't know that that's not how it ended.
That's
Tim.
not.
That's
not.
very.
I left it there, Jlee, and I want to hear about your experience. I left it there as a message of hope. Now tell us about your experience, Jlee.
Well, I'm just going to say you're braver than I, because like we've got less than a few hundred people in the office, but it's not consistent. And this is a building that houses, let's say 4,000 people, but like nothing is open. There's no amenities or no water stations or anything. So I had to take my coffee. I had to take my bottled water. I had to bring my own snacks, but like it just was bizarre because I walked into my office and the calendars still were on March. And that's one thing I'm very vigilant about, is like I change the calendars every month. If I'm in someone's cube or their office and it still says the prior month, I change it for them. I cannot help myself. And so they still said March, and like, this is going to be embarrassing, but I'll just humble myself and tell you guys, there was like a cup of coffee on my desk. I was like, well, I didn't even like, it was a to-go coffee cup. I was like, I'm not opening it. I just pushed it to the edge of the desk. And then I took it to the trash on my way out. But like, it's just so weird, a place that you spend so much time previously, because I love being in the office. And I don't know if I would say I'm depressed, Chris, but it was just weird being back there. And I wonder if things will ever be the same. I'm just not sure. But Tim, who else is in your office? You go in every day, but like, how many people are there?
Well, I think for the first like 60 days, it was really just a core team of like 4 of us. So I had a couple of employees that I think I mentioned that like their work at home situation wasn't going to work for them. So they said, hey, is there any way, that can come to work? And we're like, yeah, I mean, like kind of like KD's office, but like we have plenty of room. Like you can come here and work and we'll make sure that no one's around you, kind of thing. And we all just kind of social distance from each other. So it wasn't a big deal. And then I had some back office folks like, payroll, accounting folks that had to come in and do some stuff. I mean, I say that they didn't have to. I think, again, for them, it was just more efficient for them to come to work and get that stuff done versus trying to do it at home. But I always equate that what you guys went through is like going to work on a Saturday or Sunday. Like whenever you like going to it, like when I worked for big corporations and I would like, I need to run in Sunday, get a couple hours of work done. And you walk in and like only the emergency lighting's on. And like, there's like one of the security guards at the front is just always like, hey, like, why are you here? And you walk and like everyone's lights are off and you're kind of rummaging through people's desks to find like snacks to eat,
Well, except for things are frozen in time and the calendars are still on prior months. I'll tell you like what I was so like taken aback by, and here's my like thinking for folks out there as they consider return to work, if they do a return to work, is like, I was so impressed with the work that like our company has done to put up signs around social distancing, new cues and things that you need to be cognizant of, but you so stuck even in your old habits that like it takes you off guard. And so I actually saw this really good video that Nike offices in Asia put out that maybe we can drop in the show notes. But it gave everyone like a preview of what to expect when you come back to the office. And there's so many things you just take for granted. It's like, you're going to do a temperature check. You got to wear a mask. If the meeting gets too big, you got to move out of the, conference room, call the elevator with your elbow, only a certain number of people in the elevator. And even like when I was there, I went to the restroom. There's all this great signage about washing hands, hand sanitizer. But like, I freaked out when someone walked in the restroom when I was walking out because I was not expecting it. And then I also was like, oh my gosh, we're not 6 feet apart. Like, what are we supposed to do? And so, there's these little things where you're like, you got to make adjustments when it is time to go back to work. So things for us to think about, like as far as the workplace and, what life is going to be like when we all get back to it.
And hey, Jlee, if like smaller companies don't have budgets for those videos, they could just show Will Smith and I Am Legend like walking through Manhattan during the day with his dog.
Go to the video store. Yeah.
Well, you're right. There's videos, but they could show Contagion. I mean, there's like several different videos that we could all show. I think there's a clip from Handmaid's Tale that is also very appropriate that maybe we could drudge up. So we have options for how to get our workforce ready. All right. So I know that like others will go through that experience. It is interesting, a common thing we're all going through, but something I saw in the news that we wanted to talk about that I thought was an interesting first topic. So Apple, it's come out in the headlines that Apple is now going to be giving employees PTO to vote in the upcoming election. So we've got big election day in November, and it's not only that it's time off to potentially vote, but it's also potentially time off to volunteer at a polling place. And so this is applying to their retail workers, which I think is an interesting piece of it, as well as those, working at regional or corporate offices and more salaried positions. And so interesting move. Apple hasn't responded to some of the media inquiries. So I think this is an internal memo that got leaked. But big brand making big moves for something that is maybe going to be a big event in November. What do you guys think?
I like it. I mean, I think I do this right now with our own team, but it probably came from my mom. Now, my mom was like ultra conservative. She had a picture of her and George Bush in her office, right? And so she would basically want people to go under the guise, you're going to vote for the person I want you to vote for. Now, she was just old school, right? She's a baby boomer, so she just, in her mind, she never really, she would just go think about the business and think about our company and think about the, the taxes implications of who's going to be president. Like she would do all this like feeding of like the conservative agenda to her employees and then go, now go vote, And then
it's still your choice, but
yeah. And I'm sure if she knew somebody was going to vote the other way, she probably like gave them extra project work for the day or something. But I always think too, it's difficult, especially, for a lot of people to get there and vote. And so we always do that as well. I'm like, look, you go vote. If you have to come in late, you got to leave early, like, be respectful, of the job and of people, that put the time in, but like, you should go do that. Like that's your civic duty to kind of go do that. I love on the retail side, because that's really difficult to say, hey, we're going to let you go do this. In fact, if you want to go out and canvass a neighborhood or campaign or work as part of that process, again, it's great for the brand. And really it doesn't even matter if you're a CEO or a leadership team or a company that leans left or right. I think it's good all the way around, because it's an equal opportunity for all of your employees to go out and do what they want to do, which I think is pretty cool.
That Bush Sr. was a special person. It may be a pod subject for another day about my parents also doing something similar in terms of indoctrinating me, but it did get pretty far. I wanted to have a name change at a certain point because I loved that Barbara Bush. But what's not to love about that woman? But so Chris, one of the criticisms though, like, of course, because everyone wants to dump on like these, big companies making moves like this, is one of the criticisms some people have is that it's actually not far enough, because they feel like, well, you see big brands like Twitter or Patagonia who actually are making election day a company holiday. But I don't know, is that like us always liking to crap on the big brands because like it's easy to?
Well, I was all prepared to kind of, dish on the big brands, specifically Apple. What I did not see, Jlee, was the fact that this looks like an internal leak. That Apple didn't announce it. So that is heartening for me, because I like there's a couple of things here. First of all, I want to make sure everybody knows where Tim Cook comes from. Does everybody know that? Shout out. Jlee, do you know where he went to college?
No.
Southwest Missouri State.
Auburn University. War Eagle. And I just want everybody to soak on that a little bit if you don't think great things come from Alabama. And he's visited many, many times in the last 3 to 4 years. So shout out to Tim Cook. I think, so this is good, Jlee. I do think we love to dish on big brands. I was going to say that, as Tim said, I don't think this is unusual for the exempt workforces. In every like workplace I've been in for exempt workforces, it's always been a foregone conclusion in the offices I've been in, if not the entire companies, that, hey, you do like what you're going to do, like figure out a way to vote, long lunch, like whatever you got. So I think that's always been around for exempt folks. I do agree with Tim that figuring it out for the rank and file in retail, in a call center, on a manufacturing floor is really where it's at, right? So if you do that and you can figure that out, and I think that requires some scheduling. I think that almost requires, like, if you're at a location and you've got 20 people in a retail thing, they're going to work on that day. I think it's almost like a vacation calendar, right? You have to say, hey, we're going to give you time, or you can get 2 hours to volunteer or 3 hours to volunteer. We just have to cover this. So you have to figure it out logistically about that. And then the thing that, I think everybody needs to brace for, Tim talked about it a little bit, with his mom. I think there's a couple different things. First of all, like, some of the big brands are going to like start pushing the edge to try and nudge people where they think people ought to vote. And I think right now, some of the big brands that would be kind of, if not vocal, would certainly be promoting, are going to be more progressive than the other side of it, which in a lot of cases is going to be founders. Like, Tim knows this. Company founders are infamous. We talked a lot about this back in 2016 for saying, hey, you need to vote. And by the way, here's who I'm voting for. And if you like your insurance premiums, where they are, I suggest you probably take a long look at that. Tim, am I right?
Oh yeah, no, like, I literally I never saved them, but I would love to go back and find some of the emails my mother sent to our staff.
Oh my gosh, I'd love to see it.
Oh gosh, like, and again, I think people kind of took it with, okay, here's what I'm still going to do my own thing. But she was very specific about, that kind of she didn't say you should vote for this person. Here's what the things you need to consider when you vote,
What if I told you that your boss skydives, Tim in marketing is a magician, and Sam in accounting does sums in his head while standing on his hands? Seeing sides of the people you work with but never see, sides that inform and inspire their work and that can inspire yours, is what The Talent Show is all about. Email me, Tom Alexander, host of The Talent Show, at talentshow@backboneinc.com, and show us what you got. I look forward to seeing you on The Talent Show.
And I think the big thing that I think everybody's just got. So first of all, I think it's great that Apple's doing that and trying to figure out a way. If they're doing it for hourly employees, awesome. That's a significant deal for any company to figure that out. For everybody else on the exempt side, I'm kind of like, well, maybe there were some pockets where that wasn't the case. But just get ready, because all these little nudges from a perspective of who you should vote for are coming in a variety of ways. And for the founders tend to attract people a lot like themselves, especially if the company is smaller. Tim, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would.
I think that's true. But I think for the big companies, in normal circumstances, we've seen all these elections, go 50-50. I'm not sure if this one's going to, but I think anytime you push people, you're automatically pushing people away a little bit. You're alienating them. Jlee.
I do think Apple missed. I mean, if this was an internal leak, I think that's a big miss, because I think that's a big employment marketing brand content item that you could have sent out. Just said, hey, we made this decision, right? That whether you want to vote, Republican or Democrat or independent or whatever you want to vote, right? We're going to pay you to go do that because that's how important it is for us and what we believe in. Man, that's a huge miss on the marketing side.
Tim, I got a question for you and Jlee, though. If you do not say you go vote for whoever you want to vote for, Democrat, Republican, whatever, we just want you active. If you don't go to that extreme to say that, you're signaling something else if you've communicated anything before that. Like, if you don't go to that extreme, you're more than likely signaling as a company based on what you've done before. Maybe you're not. But for certainly the founder-driven companies, that happens a lot.
We all know that we're just, literally months away from all the emails that will hit Business Insider that we'll see when the CEOs of some of these kind of mid-sized, even larger sized companies start sending these emails out to their employees, and they have this tinge of, you need to vote this way or that way. We're going to see those. It happened the last election. It's definitely going to happen this election.
Oh my gosh. Yes, we should get ready for that. And I think you're right, Chris. Like you've got to make that statement or else things are inferred. And I even think about like Marriott as a company. And, I think given who our founders are and people that we've had on our board of directors, including, formerly on our board of directors, the current senator from the state of Utah, Mr. Mitt Romney. And I think people make assumptions like based on who your founders are, who you have associated with your company, what certain leanings might be. And so super important to make those kinds of statements to ensure that people feel like they do have a choice. But I'm going to tell you guys what people are missing the boat on in terms of a benefit related to elections that I think people need to get on board with. What is more important to me is like, I'm already planning to, and last year I had to do this as well, like planning to take either the first half day of the next day of the election off or the full day, because last year I spent the first 4 hours of the morning just curled up in a ball crying, and I was not effective. So it was like, okay, there is no work getting done the next day. And part of it is also like I'm on the East Coast. And so like I was up late watching the returns and exhausted. I was also very pregnant at that point. So it was very, very tiring in that last election. 8 months pregnant, mind you. And so for this upcoming election, I've actually blocked my calendar off where I'm planning to take a PTO day because I'm either going to be really celebrating or really crying. I don't know if other people feel that way, but time off the next day to deal with the hangover or the tantrums, that might be the next big benefit folks, should be thinking about. So well done to Apple. For those who aren't aware, there's also this, campaign out there called Time Off to Vote, where there's a bunch of companies starting to band together around this idea of giving employees paid time off to vote. So good job, Apple. Good job, some of these other companies that are out there doing that.
Jlee, will you end this segment by giving a call out to Tim Cook and just saying War Eagle for me?
I don't even know what that means. But War Eagle, Tim Cook.
Thank you.
Well,
Auburn cheering section.
I'm gonna clip that out. That's awesome. I've got that for posterity's sake.
I don't know how enthusiastic that was, but what I do know you're talking about, Mr. Dunn, is the fact that Tim Cook, great CEO, interesting person, you're saying is an alum of the distinguished Auburn University, a place from which he received a degree. And I think it's an interesting segue to our next topic, which is, when she is not holding a can of Goya beans for a photo op on her Twitter feed, Ivanka Trump, special advisor to the president. And I say the Goya beans thing jokingly, but I actually think this is interesting. So, prompted and led by Ivanka, Trump signed an executive order last month, really targeted towards federal government, who is, a large employer, to take a little bit of a different approach and rethink how they map out and determine who is qualified for jobs. And part of the push with this was around looking to prioritize job skills over specific degrees. And so, when you look at, how they made the announcement, some of the people that they had as part of this discussion, I think the thinking that they were trying to push here was that, they want to make it easier for people to get federal jobs and not have higher education or a degree specifically as hard of a requirement as a barrier for people getting, great jobs in the federal government. And so, it resurrected this whole discussion around skills versus degrees. And I think the Tim Cook and Auburn University thing is actually like a really good example too of where, you have so much affinity, love and care for certain schools, separate from schools and passion around being part of, alumni group. You also have, requirements that you see on jobs. Some of them, at times crazy that I've seen around, certain degrees, certain levels of years of experience for jobs. And it's resurrected this whole discussion around, skills versus degrees. And so, the federal government is, making announcements like this. And so what do you guys think about this latest move that they're making, and what it means for everyone else?
So no, I actually really like the fact that the federal government's trying to catch up with private industry. I think, 5 to 8 years ago on the Silicon Valley side, they just couldn't hire computer science degreed people for all these positions because they were never going to have enough. And so they started to eliminate a lot of these degrees that were in these job descriptions that were really just there in a different time, right? When you have high unemployment and you have way too many candidates, we've been awful historically in HR of jamming crap on job descriptions that really weren't there, but it helped us kind of weed people out. And I think now with a lot of the AI technology and selection technology and stuff, we can go get the best people without that. So I like that. I also do agree that it increases your talent pool, which in a high unemployment environment isn't necessarily the thing you want. But at the same time, with a lot of the technology we have now, we can see that cream rise to the top, regardless if they have some degree that doesn't really mean anything. So I like that. KD, where are you at?
So obviously I like it, right? Skills over education. I do think, by the way, education still shows us a lot. I don't think we should discount that. I still think degrees are valuable. I think they show like an ability to be resilient, to stick with it, hopefully pick up something about working with others as well as domain experience. So I don't want to totally discount the college degree because it's still good, but I think everybody is good with this move to skills. Let me tell you, Jlee, where this gets difficult for me. Where it gets difficult for me is because it comes from the Trump organization, there's this automatic move to discount it. Now,
cancel.
I'm saying it again, Tim.
Cancel.
Yeah. So I mean, I get all the challenges with the current administration, but correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like overall that this move to skills is traditionally, skills over education would traditionally be a more progressive value. Would it not, Jlee?
Traditionally, yes. Yes, traditionally, yes.
Okay,
what you guys can't see is the crazy gesticulation and reactions that Chris is having at the moment.
So let me I'll jump in and then you come right back in, Jlee. So the hard part for me as a moderate, okay, and I'm like sliced right down the middle, and we won't go into that because we try and keep out of that. But this is a progressive thing that just because it's coming out of an administration that a lot of people have problems with, we're automatically discounting it. I'll give you another great example, Jlee. So 2019 SHRM National. I don't believe you were there. I think SHRM was. And you've got the CEO of SHRM that really did nothing at that convention but talk about launching programs on recidivism, which is basically getting people with convictions to work. He really did a great job of it. I got to tell you, he did a great job of it, so much so that I was sick of hearing about it by the end of day 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he really, really plowed it. Now, that's the type of program that traditionally is a progressive program, but because it came from SHRM, and specifically Johnny, and because SHRM made a decision to really, I think, feature the Koch brothers as or Koch Industries as one of 3 employers, it automatically got discounted. And so I think we have to look at progress for what progress is. And I think the fact that we're always skeptical of it, if we're skeptical of anything progressive coming from, I guess, entities that would be viewed as conservative or whatever, I think I'm just troubled that we always discount that. I think it's a show of how fractured and polarized we've become.
Oh, totally. I mean, so the argument and the criticism that some folks may have for this move that they made is that, this is, a PR move, a media campaign to appeal to a particular demographic who maybe supports Trump today, and that they want to continue to have support him heading into November and election season and these holidays or time off that some of us may have to do our civic duty. And so I get that. People think okay, they're trying to, appeal to that population. But I think to your point, Chris, when you look at this one objectively, one of the things that I think is compelling and that I hope, people can embrace and think about is, so in this case, we're talking about federal government, but in general, when it comes to jobs, the idea of still hanging on to degrees as a requirement for, some jobs or functions that frankly, I don't think should require them. I think that in and of itself is potentially, a driver of racial disparities. When you start looking at the population and demographics of who is receiving a degree. And so I actually think, as people, HR people in particular, if we're trying to think about what are ways in which we can make a meaningful impact as we think about anti-racism efforts or to be a better supporter of, things such as Black Lives Matter, to have a gut reaction and say oh, we can't get on board with this, federal initiative that they're driving and what's the motivation and intention with it. I actually think to pause, think about it and say wait a minute, what's the value here? How can we, how can this help advance causes that we may be personally passionate about or feel are important? And then bringing that back into our workplace is a, practical way to actually think about this and hopefully drive change in support of issues that we're, passionate about.
I do think it takes progressive leaders to believe, though, because if you think about most leaders in most organizations right now, probably went through the traditional higher ed, got a degree. And so when they hire somebody, they always well, I did it, you have to do it. And to change that mentality takes somebody to have some pretty good confidence about themselves and self-insight and just kind of understanding of the world. That's not everybody. So I think it's a really difficult road to turn. At one point, I required every recruiter I hired to have a degree. But the reasoning was in my mind was that, I know they don't need a degree to recruit, but it does take it takes some wherewithal to actually finish a degree program, right? It shows me something about this person to get it done. Not just the classwork, but going down to the registrar's office and paying that last check and filling it, you just have to go through the steps and finish it, right? And when you go and you hire a position, you have to open the rec and you have to finish the rec. And I wanted that in my mind, that's what I kept telling myself. Well, there's a lot of ways you can show somebody that you can complete a project. It doesn't have to be a degree. And so we dumped that, again, probably 5 years ago or so. And we've hired some of our best people as recruiters that just don't have a degree that we would have missed out on. So
can I ask, do you require equivalent experience, a degree or 4 years of experience? How do you guys handle that?
Well, for us, it depended. We usually hired entry level, right? And then trained.
Okay.
So literally we looked for equivalent skills experience. So, your ability to actually have a conversation with an adult, and stuff like that. Whether that was customer service, whether that was whatever, and different things that if we felt like we could teach it, a lot of the computer stuff, whatever, then that wasn't a big deal. But there just had to be some really strong people skills to be a recruiter and talk somebody into a job. But there was no formal education that really had to take place there. So,
hey, Jlee, I think.
Wait, I got a quick question, Katie, before I get off this. What percentage do you guys think of actual jobs that we do right now in, let's say, just say America, that actually need a degree? I don't want to have brain surgery by somebody that just kind of came up through the ropes, right?
20%.
20%.
That's my back of the napkin.
Yeah. Yep.
Less than 30%. Yeah. I'm probably close to that.
And yet,
there's
when we
technical things, but
if you were to break down your corporate job descriptions that you currently have open on your site, I would bet it's 90%, are asking for some kind of education or degree. that's not really needed. So, I don't know if it's a basis, right? Like if I have an entry-level marketing position, do I need somebody to have a marketing degree to be successful? No, but does it help them have a good basis coming in and maybe learn quicker? Maybe. But maybe it shouldn't be required. Maybe it's just something that would be a nice to have, right?
Yeah, and Jlee, when you went through your talking points about like, one of the reasons people might be skeptical is this is potential seeding of jobs and kind of like getting votes for a Republican administration. I mean, that's not going to happen like in that time frame. And like all the demographic slices that you mentioned, I mean, really, you could almost guarantee that won't happen in the way that maybe the naysayers are thinking it will. So just another example, like we like the ideas when they come from us, but we're automatically skeptical of the ideas of others. And I say that in a very like broad sense. I'm the same way. It's human nature. If it's my idea, I love it. If it's Tim's idea, I'm kind of like, well, that seems shaky at best.
That's real life between KD and I.
So 2 things on this, and then we're going to call it a day. So one thing is, if an employer or organizations feel really strongly that degrees should be required for certain kinds of functions, one of the things I think that we all need to be really honest about is if we're going to require it or feel that strongly, like what are you going to do to support your workforce in getting a degree? And how are you approaching things such as, paying for tuition to help people go back to school and finish whatever they need to finish, or go back to school for the first time to get that degree. And so I think that there's some responsibility in a company if you feel that strongly about the requirement for, let's say, non-technical things. And then the other thing that I would just leave folks with is like, I can't tell you that having a degree really means much for certain, in certain situations. Like how many times I was personally on academic probation and just barely like hanging on like to get to the finish line. I mean, having that degree truly, like, I'm not sure it really is going to give you much. And so I always put like my own personal self in the situation to say like, it would like, that didn't bring value. Like I worked probably the entire time when I was in school, and it was that work experience that I got rather than, the degree itself. There might be some trivia that I still, can whip up because of being in school. But other than that, sometimes I'm not sure. But anyways, I digress. You know what? We're going to give one more shout out, Chris, to Mr. Tim Cook.
Say it with.
I know. I'm going to say it with conviction for you. War Eagle. And then you're going to be able to cut that clip, and I don't know how you're going to use it, but I'll give it to you because you are my friend and I want you to be happy. I want you guys both to be happy. And so guys, it's been great seeing you, chatting with you. Interesting. I didn't think that we were going to get so political today, but that was fun. We're not scared of it. So with that, we are out. I'm Jessica Lee. He's Chris Dunn. He's Tim Sackett. Have a wonderful day, guys.